The current had carried me downstream, and I was now about a quarter mile away. The salt water stung my wounds. At first it was just a shadow in the distance moving fast. And then I saw it. So this happened last summer when I went up north to visit my cousin Matt. He lives in this super remote area, like middle of nowhere kind of remote, surrounded by thick woods and rivers. It was supposed to be a chill weekend, just beers, fishing, and swimming. Matt kept bragging about this river spot he found a few months ago. He said it was secluded AF and had the clearest water he'd ever seen. I was like, cool, sounds perfect. The plan was simple. Hike out to the river, spend the day swimming, and maybe catch some fish. Nothing crazy. The weather was perfect, sunny, no clouds, and just hot enough to make the idea of jumping into the river sound amazing. Looking back, I wish I'd just stayed home. The hike itself was brutal. Matt didn't mention it was a solid 2-hour trek through nothing but trees and mud. No trails, no markers, just us bushwhacking our way through the forest with backpacks full of gear. Every step was a fight against mosquitoes. And by the time we got there, I was drenched in sweat and ready to collapse. But then I saw the river. It was stunning, like something out of National Geographic. The water was so clear you could see straight to the bottom, and it was surrounded by these massive trees that made it feel like we'd stepped into some hidden paradise. Matt jumped in almost immediately, yelling about how refreshing it was. I hesitated for a second because something about the place gave me this weird vibe. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it felt off, like we weren't supposed to be there. But I figured I was just being paranoid. After a while, I couldn't resist. The heat was unbearable, and the water looked too good. I jumped in, and holy shit, it was amazing. The water was cold, but not freezing, and the current was gentle. It felt safe, peaceful even. We swam around for a bit, laughing and tossing rocks. Matt was splashing me, acting like an idiot, and for a moment, I forgot all about the weird vibe I'd felt earlier. It was just us, the river, and the sound of birds in the distance. But then something happened that made my stomach drop. I was floating on my back, staring up at the sky, when I noticed it, a shadow. It passed beneath me, quick and silent, and it was big. Like, really big. At first I thought it was just my imagination, or maybe a school of fish. But when I stood up and looked around, the water was empty. I told Matt, but he just laughed it off, saying it was probably nothing. "Stop being a wuss," he said. And, yeah, maybe I was overreacting. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. A few minutes later, Matt swam to the edge of the river and climbed onto a rock to rest. I stayed in the water, floating near the middle, still trying to convince myself everything was fine. That's when I noticed something weird. The birds had stopped chirping. The forest, which had been alive with sound just moments ago, was completely silent. Even the insects were quiet. It was like the whole world had pressed pause. Then I felt it, a ripple. The ripple wasn't big, but it was enough to make me freeze. I turned slowly, scanning the water, and that's when I saw it. A pair of eyes, barely visible above the surface, staring straight at me. At first I thought I was losing it, but then the eyes disappeared, and the water shifted. Something massive was moving toward me, slow but deliberate. "Matt!" I screamed, my voice cracking. He looked up from the rock, confused, but when he saw the look on my face, he knew something was wrong. "Get out of the water!" I yelled, my heart pounding. I didn't wait for him to respond. I started swimming toward the edge as fast as I could, my arms and legs thrashing like crazy. Behind me, the water erupted. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear it. The sound of something huge cutting through the water. gaining on me. Matt was yelling, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of my own heartbeat. All I could think about was getting to the shore. My body felt like it was on fire, every muscle screaming as I pushed myself harder than I ever had before. I made it to the edge, just as the thing lunged. I scrambled onto the rocks, my hands slipping on the wet surface, and turned around just in time to see it. It was a crocodile. A massive, prehistoric-looking beast, its jaws wide open, inches from where I'd been just seconds ago. It slammed into the rocks with a force that shook the ground, its teeth snapping shut with a sound like a gunshot. Matt was screaming, throwing rocks at it, but the thing didn't care. It just kept thrashing, its tail whipping the water into a frenzy. We didn't stick around to see what would happen next. As soon as the crocodile backed off, we grabbed our stuff and bolted. The hike back was a blur. I don't even remember half of it. My brain was stuck in survival mode, replaying the image of those jaws over and over again. I've read stories about crocodile attacks, but I never thought I'd experience one. Matt still jokes about it sometimes, saying we were lucky, but I can't laugh about it. That thing could have killed me. It could have killed both of us. I woke up that Sunday morning feeling like death. My head was pounding, my mouth was dry as sandpaper, and my stomach churned with every movement. It was one of those hangovers where you swear to God you'll never drink again, even though you know you're lying to yourself. The weekend had been a blur of bad decisions. Way too many shots, too many beers, and zero sleep. My phone buzzed with a text from my buddy Mike. Lake Day, be ready in 30. I groaned and thought about bailing, but I didn't want to be the guy who flaked. Plus, a swim in the lake sounded like it might help me sweat out the booze and clear my head. Spoiler, worst decision of my life. The drive to the lake was quiet. I was in the back seat nursing a bottle of water and trying not to puke. The others were hyped, blasting music and talking about how epic the weekend had been. I nodded along, but my brain was foggy, like it was wrapped in cotton. When we got to the lake, it was beautiful. The water sparkled under the sun and the air smelled fresh, a mix of pine and algae. It was the kind of place that made you forget your problems, even if your problems were self-inflicted. We set up near the shore, tossing towels and coolers onto the sand. The water looked so inviting, and before I knew it, everyone was stripping down to their swimsuits and diving in. After a while, someone pointed to a stone wall across the lake. It was maybe 200 yards away, jutting out of the water like a mini cliff. People were climbing it and jumping off, laughing and screaming as they hit the water. Mike turned to me with a grin. "Bet you can't swim across and jump," he said. I wanted to tell him to screw off, but my fragile, hungover ego wouldn't let me. "Watch me," I muttered, peeling off my shirt and wading into the water. The first few strokes felt good. The cool water was like a slap to my overheated body, and for a moment I thought this might actually be fun. The swim to the wall wasn't easy, but I made it. My arms were burning and my legs felt like lead, but I ignored it. I climbed onto the stone wall, panting as I reached the top. The view was incredible. The lake stretched out in all directions, shimmering under the afternoon sun. My friends cheered from the shore, their voices faint but encouraging. I took a deep breath and jumped, the rush of freefall giving me a momentary high. The water hit me like a shock, and when I surfaced, I was smiling. For a brief moment, I felt alive. After a few jumps, I realized it was time to head back. My friends were still on the shore, lounging and laughing, oblivious to how far away I was. I glanced at the lake and felt a twinge of unease. The swim back that looked a lot longer than the swim out. My arms were sore, my legs were cramping, and my head was pounding again. Part of me thought about asking someone to paddle out in a kayak or something, but I didn't want to look weak, so I dove back in. The first few strokes were fine. I focused on my breathing, keeping a steady rhythm. But about halfway across, I hit a wall. My muscles felt like they were filled with cement, and every stroke took twice as much effort. I tried to keep going, but my body wasn't having it. My legs started cramping, sharp pains shooting up my calves, and my arms felt like they were on fire. My head dipped under the water, and I came up sputtering. I was halfway across the lake, too far from the wall to go back and too far from the shore to reach safety. Panic set in. I thrashed in the water, trying to stay afloat, but it was no use. I was completely out of energy. My breaths came in short, frantic gasps, and my chest felt like it was being crushed. I yelled for help, but my voice was weak and shaky. Everyone else was near the shore, too far away to hear me. I managed one last scream before my head went under. The world turned silent. Underwater, everything felt surreal. The sunlight filtered through the surface, casting a pale glow, but it felt distant, unreachable. I opened my eyes and saw bubbles rising around me, my limbs moving sluggishly as I sank deeper. I knew I was in trouble, real trouble. My brain was screaming at me to move, to fight, but my body wasn't responding. I tried to kick, to push myself upward, but it was like swimming through molasses. I stopped moving, hoping I'd float up naturally, but I kept sinking. The pressure in my chest was unbearable, my lungs screaming for air. In that moment, I thought, this is it, this is how I die. But then something clicked. A surge of adrenaline shot through me, and I started kicking again, clawing my way back toward the surface. When I broke through the surface, I gasped for air, my lungs burning like I had inhaled fire. I was barely staying afloat, my body on the verge of giving up. That's when I saw it. A basketball, sailing through the air toward me. It splashed into the water just a few feet away, bobbing on the surface. I don't even know how I found the strength, but I reached out and grabbed it. The moment my hands touched it, I felt this overwhelming wave of relief. It was just a basketball, but to me it was a lifeline. With the basketball supporting me, I managed to stay afloat long enough for someone to swim out and pull me back to shore. My body was shaking, my chest heaving, but I was alive. When I collapsed on the sand, coughing and spitting up water, I looked up to see Kalfan, this dude I barely knew, standing over me. "You good?" he asked. I nodded, too exhausted to speak. Later, I found out Kalfan had seen me struggling and acted fast, grabbing the basketball and chucking it as far as he could. He probably saved my life, and I'll never forget that. But the shame, that stuck with me too. I'd almost drowned because I was too stubborn to ask for help. I was 15, and I thought I knew everything. Growing up in Oz, the ocean was my playground. I'd been diving since I was a kid, and by the time I hit my teens, I felt invincible. That day, I'd had enough of the chaos at home. My parents were fighting again, and I just needed to get away. So, I took the family boat out of the reef. No one knew I'd gone. I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't the first time I'd done something reckless, but that day, it would be the first time I genuinely thought I was going to die. I grabbed my gear, anchored the boat, and dove in. The water was cool and clear, the kind of visibility that makes you forget how dangerous the ocean can be. I just wanted to clear my head, to find some peace. Little did I know, I was about to make mistake after mistake, mistakes that would almost kill me. I wasn't even certified to dive deeper than 60 feet, but that didn't stop me. I went down to 28 meters, about 90 feet, because the reef below looked incredible. The coral was alive with colors, fish darting in and out like tiny bolts of lightning. It was mesmerizing, and for a moment I forgot all about the argument back home. But the deeper you go, the more the ocean presses against you. Breathing gets harder, and your body doesn't respond as quickly. I should have known better. I should have stayed within my limits. And then I saw it. At first it was just a shadow in the distance moving fast. Too fast. My mind raced as I tried to identify it. When it came closer, my stomach dropped. It was a mako shark. For those who don't know, makos are built for speed. They're lean, mean, torpedo-shaped predators that can hit speeds of up to 35 miles per hour. And this one? It wasn't in curious mode. It was in lunch mode. The shark cut through the water like a missile, heading straight for me. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay still. Running or panicking would only trigger its instincts. I hovered in the water, my eyes locked on the shark. I was terrified, but I remembered my training. If a shark attacks, you don't try to outswim it. You stand your ground. Back then, we didn't have shark shields like we do now. Instead, we relied on chainmail sleeves. The idea was simple. If the shark bites your arm, the taste of metal will make it let go. I reached for my arm to make sure the sleeve was in place, and that's when I realized I'd left it on my bed at home. Mistake number 3. I didn't have time to panic. The shark was on me, its black, soulless eyes locked onto mine. I had my kelp knife in hand, but it felt useless against something so massive. The shark lunged, and I did the only thing I could. I extended my arm, aiming to give it the limb instead of my torso or head. Its jaws clamped down, and the pain was immediate and overwhelming. It was like someone had set my arm on fire and then squeezed it in a vice. The water around me exploded in a cloud of red as I screamed into my regulator. With every ounce of strength, I drove the knife into the shark's side. The shark let go, thrashing violently, before darting off into the blue. I was alive, but now I had a new set of problems. My arm was shredded. Blood poured from the gaping wounds, and the salt water made the pain unbearable. I was bleeding out, and every drop of blood in the water was like a dinner bell for any other predators nearby. I knew I had to get to the surface, but in my panic, I forgot everything I'd been taught about safe ascents. I dropped my weight belt and shot upward like a cork. When I broke the surface, I gasped for air, my lungs burning. The boat was there, but it wasn't close. The current had carried me downstream, and I was now about a quarter mile away. The salt water stung my wounds, and my arm felt like it was hanging on by a thread. Every stroke was agony, but I forced myself to swim toward the boat. I knew that if I stopped, I'd either drown from exhaustion or bleed out in the water. The journey to the boat felt endless, my vision blurred, and my head pounded. I was lightheaded from the blood loss, and my muscles screamed with every movement. When I finally reached the boat, I was barely holding on. I hauled myself up with one arm, collapsing onto the deck. Blood pooled beneath me, and I knew I didn't have much time. The first aid kit was a joke, barely stocked, and completely inadequate for a shark bite. I managed to fashion a makeshift tourniquet out of some rope, tying it around my arm to slow the bleeding. I tried to use the boat's radio to call for help, but of course it was broken. My dad had told me to fix it 100 times, but I'd never bothered. With no other options, I started the boat and gunned it toward shore. The engine roared as I pushed it to its limit, the boat bouncing over the waves. Every bump sent a fresh wave of pain through my arm, but I didn't care. The tourniquet was holding, but barely. Blood seeped through the rope, and I felt weaker with every passing minute. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting the mako to come flying out of the water to finish what it started. The shore came into view, and I honked the horn repeatedly, hoping someone would be there to help. I don't remember much about what happened after I reached the dock. Someone must have heard the horn, because the next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance, my arm wrapped in bloody towels. The damage was worse than I'd thought. The shark had bitten clean through my tricep, detaching it completely. It took 172 stitches to close the wounds and months of physical therapy to regain even partial use of my arm. The scars are still there, a permanent reminder of my stupidity. I've told this story 100 times, and people always ask me the same thing. Weren't you scared? Of course I was scared. But in the moment, there's no time to think about fear. You just do what you have to do to survive.